And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Tracer Round Podcast. A tracer round is a type of ammunition designed to help visually track the path of rounds fired. Tracers show where you need to adjust or redirect fire. Join Army veteran Sergeant First Class Terry Lynch for Tracer Rounds, the first ever podcast of its type. Whether it be military, music, sports, politics, education, relationships, or gender issues, no target is off limits or out of bounds. Are you on target? Or does your fire need to be recalibrated? Whether you adjust fire or fire for effect, tune in to Tracer Rounds, where the range is always open and there are rounds going down range.
Hi, welcome to Tracer Rounds. My name is Terry, and I am your host. And I have with me today Alan Mednick and Ashley Williams. And they're going to talk to us today a little bit about what they do and how they help veterans and how their services can assist you in helping yourself or helping family members. Alan, you want to take the lead into starting with what you do and how your services then interconnect with Ashley's?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me on here. My name's Alan Mednick. I work with LivingWorks Education, and what I talk about is not always the most easiest subject to talk about, but it's a very important topic to talk about, and that is suicide prevention. I am the suicide prevention manager for the Southeast United States. And again, it's a really important topic that we need to really further the conversation on. I got involved with suicide prevention, as I think I told you, Terry, about 11 years ago, when I did lose my daughter to suicide. She was 19 years old, and 4 years later, I lost my niece to suicide, who also happened to be 19 years old. So that was my entry into it, and basically, I started trying to figure out, more about mental health and suicide prevention in general, and I became involved with a lot of different organizations, mainly American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, NAMI, many other ones. I'm part of the Governor's Challenge here in Florida, and also, as you can see, the 22 Project with Ashley.
So my name is Ashley Williams. I'm the program director for the 22 Project. And what Alan and I do really intersects, because the 22 Project, our goal is to reduce the number of veteran suicides per day. Our organization was named after the statistic that came out several years ago that 22 veterans die by suicide each day. And so our focus really is, how do we help heal the physical injury that comes with combat in order to be able to help our veterans become more receptive to some of the cognitive supports that are out there. And so we focus particularly on hyperbaric oxygen therapy and how it heals the effects of traumatic brain injury. That is one of the leading precursors to suicidal ideations. And so we really try to take the stance of medical healing. And while they're down here for hyperbaric treatments, we focus on how do we bring veterans back into community and develop camaraderie with other veterans that we have in the area and who are going through the program. Alan and LivingWorks has been a great help to us to be able to equip our team to identify the signs of suicide. And he has been on call for us many times to be able to step in and help with veterans that we have going through our program. And so we intersect in a very meaningful way.
Wow. So how does somebody engage the services of either LivingWorks education, suicide prevention training, or as in just maybe education for like a unit or like family? I mean, I don't know how small the group is or can be, or how big the group has to be to incorporate those services. And then after we talk about that, then I kind of want to talk about how we engage the 22 project.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, so LivingWorks is a global leader in suicide prevention education. We have more research-based, evidence-based research on our trainings, and what they are is there's several trainings that we have that we call in our network of safety. We start off with a program called START, which is a 90-minute online training. And then we go to a program called Safe Talk, which is a 3 to 4 hour in-person, as you know, Terry, because that's the one that you went through. And that one basically takes somebody from, people that have a certainty of wanting to die. Basically, we want to get them to a place of asking for help. And that's what the trainings do. It trains a person. So let me take a step back on this. We basically believe everybody has a role to play. These trainings are good for anybody from, teachers at public schools, the community, up to law enforcement, up to the military. And we train a lot of military throughout the world, a lot of every branch. So that's what the purpose is to get everybody trained in these really important classes. The next one besides Safe Talk we have is a training called Assist. And that's the one that actually Ashley went through. Assist is the gold standard of all trainings out there. You'll find a lot of like call centers, crisis centers use our Assist program. And then the last one we have is called the faith-based program. Again, these are all trainings that we have to really help people. And I say everybody has a role to play, but also what I really want to bring out there is that everybody can do this. There's a lot of things that we hear out there, the reasons why people won't help somebody that's in crisis. And, it could be everything from somebody missing the signs, dismissing the signs, or just avoiding the signs that someone is in crisis. Because basically, a lot of people will say, I'm not a mental health counselor. I can't help somebody. Or, I'm going to say the wrong thing. But with these trainings, it really helps people with a confidence of say, hey, you know what? I could sit there and I could talk to somebody. There was actually somebody I was at a conference with who was trained in Assist, and they came to me and they said the perfect line. They were like, you know what? After I went through Assist, it normalized the conversation. And that's what these trainings do. It makes you feel confident enough to say, look, I could sit down and I could have a conversation with somebody that's in crisis and I could help them. And that's what these trainings do. And again, we train all branches of the military all over the world, including veterans, obviously, too.
Right. Well, that's what I was so impressed with during the Safe Talk class that I took, as part of my work day. But I was glad that they signed me up for it because I didn't even know beforehand that I was going to go. They said, "Oh, by the way, we're sending you to Safe Talk," and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" I was like, "Oh goodness, tell me what this is about." They go, "Oh, you'll find out when you get there," and I'm like, "Okay, that's good." But so for me, I've always worried about asking somebody directly, "Are you thinking about suicide?" I never thought I could just openly ask somebody. I thought that would drive them to suicide. I'd give them ideas, and that's kind of where I was. I was like, I can really just ask them. I really, that's okay, that's really where the conversation starts, and that's where the help begins, is really getting the talk out there and really being real, having the real talk with somebody.
That's a really good point that you bring out there, because there are a lot of myths, and that's some of the things that we have to try to get out of everybody's thinking. Because again, if you ask somebody about suicide, what it does, it actually shows that you care enough about somebody to ask that question. It's not an easy question to ask. It's a really tough one. And as a matter of fact, like we were in the training, one of the things that we do is we ask you to say, hey, if sometimes when people are thinking about this, that, and the other thing, they're thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? And a lot of times what people will do when they say it the first time, they'll be like, are you thinking about suicide? And that word drops. And it's a hard word to say, but it's hard to say, but that's why it's so important to say, because it's saying, I care about you.
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't really thought of that until that training. I hadn't really felt like I could just openly say that. And I would be the one to go, are you thinking about suicide? Like, is that on your mind? It would be a really low conversation, because I would be worried that I might influence somebody or impact somebody the wrong way. And then they're like, yeah, let's, like they would react completely
Yeah.
opposite of what I was hoping. So
Yeah, but you got to remember, people aren't influenced that easily. And we do have the will to live is stronger than the will to die. So that's what we're trying to do with these trainings. By putting time in there too, we could try and bring that will to live up. We want that person themselves to come up and say, yeah, you know what? I do want to live. I do have a reason to live. And that's what we do with these trainings. So, and the best place to have people trained is where people are going to be. You at work at the Southern Command. The people that are sitting next to you, you're going to notice more every day, because you're with them 8 hours a day. You're with them probably more than their family is. So you're going to notice differences, and that's basically what we're looking for. We're looking for differences in people's, demeanor, what they're doing. It's what you see, hear, sense, and learn in somebody. What's the difference that's saying that they might be in crisis?
Right. Yeah, I agree. Ashley, what so how do we engage services with you? What is it that somebody would need to do in order to be considered a patient, or be considered for treatment, or what's the process?
So we, like I mentioned before, we provide hyperbaric oxygen therapy for veterans with traumatic brain injuries. And I'll speak in a bit about why hyperbaric oxygen therapy is effective. But our program in particular is intended for any veteran, reservist, active duty personnel who has either been diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury or suspects the diagnosis of a traumatic brain injury. So any type of exposure to a blast, an accident, anything that's taken place, even if they don't have the official diagnosis, that would qualify them for our program. Now, it is a 30 to 35-day program in South Florida, so it requires a little bit of autonomy and independence and time to be able to come down. But that's our main criteria, aside from free of substance abuse and free of inhalants for 6 months in order to receive the oxygen in the best way possible. But we have fairly minimal criteria. We want to help as many people as we possibly can. So.
And so I know that you said that it's paid because you have donations. So is there like fundraisers that you do, or is there a place to donate? Because we can put that up on the screen if you want to kind of direct people that want to maybe contribute and maybe kind of be a part of what's going on, and help veterans or help people in their area, or at least just kind of refer other people that they might know that would be able to help.
Definitely. We are located in South Florida, but our reach is national. And so we've served veterans, I think, from 46 states at this point. And so we accept from all over the country. A lot of our events are local to South Florida. So we have a golf tournament coming up in November to celebrate our 10-year anniversary and Veterans Day. And so that's our in-person event. But we accept any and all donations through our website, which is support22project.org. I'll put the website in the chat. But the treatments themselves, we try to offer as much as possible to our veterans. So any donation goes a long way with us.
That sounds great. And I know that a lot of people would want to donate to something that's for such a good cause. So we appreciate that. We've got about a minute before we're going to go to break. Is there any parting things we want to say before we hit the break?
I just want to make sure I get the invitation to the golf outing because I want to go to that one.
Where's it going to be?
You're on it. It's in Boca Raton, so it's at the Boca Raton Golf and Racket Club. It
Nice.
will be on November 7th, and so we've got a little ways away, but we are in the middle of preparations for that. Like I said, to be able to raise as much as we can to help as many veterans as we can.
Perfect. Okay, I think we're going to go to break. Grizz, if you'll take us to break, then we'll be back and we'll talk a little bit more about how we can help our families and help our service members.
Another regular day, nobody knows. It's that time, he's coming home to them from a foreign land. He pulls up, his mama cries, looks at daddy with tears in his eyes and says, nothing feels better than this. Couple of months go by and no one sees. Something just ain't right, all he wants is peace. He needs help, but he don't know the path to take or the way to go to be free and put his mind at ease. We will help, 'cause we can't stand to see a soldier go to God by their own hands. We will do everything we can to make 22-0 again. He gets help, but he still feels off. Sees an ad on the TV about a dog batting said, this is a man's best friend. Whoa, so he goes one day and he picks it up. Never thought a dog could bring so much love and put a smile on his face. But he's finally found a saving grace. He needs help, but he don't know the path to take or the way to go to be free. Put his mind at ease. We will help, 'cause we can't stand to see a soldier go to God by their own hands. We will do everything we can to make 22-0 again. Whoa, whoa. He needs help, but he don't know the path to take or the way to go to be free. Put his mind at ease. We will help, 'cause we can't stand to see a soldier go to God by their own hands. We will do everything we can to make 22-0 again. Ooh.
opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hi, welcome back to Tracer Rounds. I have my guests, Alan Mednick and Ashley Williams, and Alan's from LivingWorks, and also Ashley is from the Project 22, and we're discussing treatments and conversations around veteran suicide and around our family members potentially thinking along those lines. So we're trying to come up with strategies and resources to help with those. So I think we really wanted to know, how do we begin a conversation if we think somebody, I know you said we just ask a simple question. We just say, are you thinking about suicide? And what do we do next? I know that you need to have some training to really engage somebody that's in this state, but if we're not trained, then what do we do?
Well, again, the first thing, and it's a really good question. The first thing is obviously, why are you asking that question? What gets you to the point to say, are you thinking about suicide? And there are these, what we call invitations. So the invitations, again, as I mentioned before, are what you see, hear, sense, and learn in somebody. What do you see a change? And what kind of changes are going on with them? And it could be any change. Now, typically when we say a change, we talk about like a 2-week span time, not somebody, breakup. Somebody broke up today and they're upset and depressed and everything. But it's over basically a constant 2-week period. So you want to see those things. And again, it could be anything. It could be somebody that might be an introvert and doesn't talk a lot, and all of a sudden they're very boisterous and vocal and seem very happy. That might be a situation where you're like, wow, things are good with them, but it could be a sign too. So there are different signs with veterans and with military. Obviously, if giving medals away, if they're doing something like that, that could be a sign. So there are things that you want to look out for, and that will say, hey, something's going on. You could ask the question, and again, when you ask the question, it needs to be in that phrase that we talked about before, and use the word suicide. So those would be the beginning, and that's what we do in these trainings. And then from there, basically, you want to listen to them. You want to basically let them tell you what their story is. You want them to get it out. Again, that old adage, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's true in this too. And that's why it really is not difficult to do these, to talk to somebody that's in crisis, because a lot of what you're doing is listening, letting them talk. Once you get them talking, then you just want to show them that you care. The 2 biggest things that I always find in people that are in crisis is that people don't understand them, or they think that people don't understand them, and that nobody cares for them, that nobody loves them. And I can never tell you if you're in crisis, I can never tell you, look, I understand what you're going through. Even if I think I do, or if I really understand, I can't tell you that. You're going to be like, there's no way you can't understand what I'm going through. But what I can do is, by listening to you, by looking you in the eyes, by nodding, by repeating what you say, by doing a lot of these things, I could say, you know what? I care about you. And that's what's showing. You're building that trust. You're building that relationship. And, those are the steps that we go through. And, the success stories with this, and that's why I love Ashley and what she does, and what Alex, the founder, and everybody at the 22 Project do, because the success stories that we have with LivingWorks are amazing. The testimonials and everything, and I got a bunch of them. And I have the same thing with the 22 Project. I mean, a couple with LivingWorks. I did a training back in November outside the Southern Command, and this was an assist training. And a chaplain in the Coast Guard, 3 months later, I spoke to him, and he told me he did an intervention because of the training and that was something that he told me. There was a really, really interesting story. There was a Air Force base in Florida, and they had a higher rate than normal of suicides on the base, and they wanted to do something and change something. And basically, they put a comprehensive program together. And part of the program included LivingWorks trainings. And I believe it was mandated that everybody go, when they joined in, go through the training. So this way you have 100% people that were trained. And over the next year and a half, the rates, I don't think there were any suicides on the base at that point, the year and a half, but the rates dropped significantly, which, was an amazing story. And we hear that constantly, that goes on after people were trained. You were trained in Safe Talk. Let me ask you, how did you feel when you were going through the training?
Well, the reason I asked you both on here, I asked Alan initially, and he said, hey, let me include my partner that can help with this. The reason I asked is because I was so inspired by what you had to say in the training that you brought forward that, I feel like I can at least talk to somebody else and hand them off, do a warm handoff to somebody, that really is equipped and able to, handle or provide services to, not handle, but provide services to someone. And so I was really impressed with the training, and I was really appreciative of my command to send me because, they knew I was going to be here for duty, and they just said, hey, we're signing you up. And I had no idea. And I was so appreciative of the training because now, I've had people kind of tell me things and say that they're in a dark place and that they really would like a resource. And so now I feel more equipped to have that conversation with somebody and not try to whisper the word suicide because I'm afraid I'll inspire them to do that, because that was my mentality before, was that you don't talk about that. You can't say that word because then you're really going to encourage somebody to do it. And so you have to be quiet and say it really down low and whisper. So I really appreciate it. I mean, it really did give me the tools in the toolbox to use, should I need them. Hopefully I don't need them, but if I do, I have them at the ready.
Yeah, you're prepared. And I got to tell you, I have similar stories with the 22 project too. I just got to tell one quick one.
Okay, yeah, we're almost at a break, so.
Oh, okay. So and maybe this could lead into the next segment for Ashley, but every other week they have a get together, and I guess we call it a squad, Camp Snow, affectionately we call it. And one of the people at this squad meeting, a Navy SEAL, unbelievable guy, and he told a story. We went around and told stories, and his story was basically like he heard voices in his head, and he was going through this. He thought he was, the word crazy. And it was just like for 14 years he was going through this, and then he came to the 22 project, and I'll never forget him sitting in the circle in the middle with his elbows on his knees and just sitting there and telling his story. And then all of a sudden he said, now with the 22 project, what they do is they do a nuclear imaging of the brain before you go into the hyperbaric chambers, and then when it's done, and the difference in the brain, you could see a physical difference. I'll let Ashley go into further of what the differences are. But when it was explained to him, he just looked at it and he's like, you know what? This is physical. It's not something, I'm not crazy. This is something that I could be helped. And by just looking at that new image of the brain and seeing that it was a physical difference in his brain, that he could be helped, he broke down crying. I mean, it was the most unbelievable experience I've ever had in my life to see how it affected him and how he knew he could be helped, and his life was going to be good again. So, and then the first thing they always say is that I could start sleeping now. They're able to sleep, and that's the first thing that I always hear when someone goes through the H-spot treatment. It's amazing. I always talk about and if we got to cut off, let me know. But I always talk about like the brain and the heart. We talk about physical and mental health. And when a lot of times people say mental, they think about crazy. And when you think about physical, you think about strength and everything else. Well, I always try to say, if we could take those two words out and just call it health, because what is the brain? The brain's an organ. What is the heart? The heart's an organ. Okay. If you have a heart attack, you have a stroke, what does the doctor tell you to do? Work out, eat right, do relax and maybe take some medication. Well, if someone has a mental health condition, what do they tell you to do? Eat right, relax, just work out, maybe take some medication. It's the same thing. If we could treat both of them the same way, I think we're going to make a big impact in that stigma. But by what the 22 Project does, and I think these nuclear imaging of the brain is such an important fact to show people that, look, you could be helped. This is physical proof. You could be helped. So I think it's an amazing thing they do, and it's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Yes, we can't wait to hear about it when we get back from our break. I think Big Chris is going to take us to our break, and then we'll be back with Ashley, and we'll talk about the 22 Project and how it can help.
Hombre muerto.
Dead man.
10 years hard time for something I didn't do. You've been living on easy street. Now justice coming to you. You're a dead man. You're a dead man walking.
opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hi, welcome back to Tracer Rounds. And I should let you know right up front that whoever's watching or wants to put something in the chat, go ahead and type in the chat, or we have phone lines open. The ticker's down there at the bottom. And our two guests that we have in studio, their websites are also down at on the ticker. So I have Alan with me from LivingWorks, and I have Ashley Williams with me from the Project 22. Ashley, do you want to talk about the 22 project and just kind of, the details about how somebody would engage those services and what, if they have to have insurance, if they have to have referrals, if, what's the process?
Yeah, I'd love to. As Alan mentioned before we went to the break, we one of the things that we offer is brain imaging. And so this particular brain image is called a SPECT scan. And what we're looking for is how well a person or a veteran's brain is functioning. And so from being able to do these scans, we're able to see where there might be low oxygen flow in the brain, and low oxygen flow would indicate an injury. And by looking at injuries in the brain, we can pair specific parts of the brain to specific symptoms that a veteran might be experiencing. And so we really talk about how the 22 Project is treating the invisible wounds of war, because oftentimes the wounds that are in our brain go unnoticed and are not necessarily connected to the emotional or behavioral health symptoms that we see. Like Alan was talking about before, we tend to separate mental health and physical health, but in reality, often the physical health of our brain can affect our mental health. Now, for the SPECT scans and for hyperbaric, we pay for that for the veterans who come through our program through private donations. And so no insurance payments, nothing needed from the veteran up front. We pay for travel accommodations and those treatments, the scans and treatments. It's quite an expensive treatment, but our veterans are worth it, because a lot of our veterans come through the program, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard something is wrong and I don't know what. Everyone's telling me that I'm okay. Everyone's telling me there's nothing showing up on our scans. But when we do these specific SPECT scans, we often see remnants of injury or indication of injury that then can be treated. And so if you think about, if there's an injury, that part of the brain is not getting adequate blood flow and oxygen flow, then we feel that the best treatment for that is the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is essentially flooding the body with oxygen, and it's pressurizing it. You sit in a chamber, you breathe for an hour and a half in a chamber that's pressurized. And the goal of pressurizing the chamber is it actually pushes the oxygen into the fluids of our body, not just the blood, meaning it can get to all the little nooks and crannies where oxygen flow or blood flow may not be getting to based off of an injury. So as Alan mentioned before, so many of the veterans that come to us struggle with sleep or headaches or anxiety, depression, so many different symptoms that oftentimes the indirect message might be that you're crazy or you're making it all up. It's all in your head. But our scans and then the treatment show that no, there actually is something going on as a result of our veterans' service, as a result of their combat experience, and there is a treatment available for it. I'd say maybe 90% of the veterans who have come through hyperbaric and through our program have received some sort of reduction in a symptom that has been causing them high levels of distress. So better sleep. We've had people who have been on migraine medications for 20 years, Botox injections, you name it, who after going through hyperbaric haven't had a headache in years. Decrease in anxiety, decrease in depression. And one of the most notable statistics is about 75% of our veterans who have come through for hyperbaric say that they've had suicidal ideations, as compared to those after the hyperbaric, that drops down to about 25% afterwards. So we're seeing a 50-point reduction in suicidal ideations just from these 40 hyperbaric treatments.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I went to your website and I reviewed all the testimonials. I read each and every one of them, and I can just tell you that I was just touched and moved by each one of those soldiers or Marines, airmen, whatever service they were in, how much that meant to them and how much it means to me that they got that treatment. I mean, you just read those testimonials and you just can't help but be moved to near tears because you know that they were feeling just like you were saying, like they weren't feeling right, but no one could find anything. It must be in their head. They're crazy, or they're making it up, something
Right.
like that. So yeah, I mean, you can really tell that those services that you're offering to veterans are very appreciated and very necessary because there is something going on. Because just because someone doesn't look well on the outside doesn't mean there's something that's not quite right on the inside. We all have a facade we show public, but that doesn't mean when we get behind closed doors or what the thoughts are in our head, that doesn't mean that we're well mentally, that we've got some challenges or something going on and maybe we don't understand them because no one's really explained this is what happens to your brain when you have these things, and this is what PTSD looks like, and this is what TBI looks like. So until somebody really sits you down and coaches you on these things, like you said, you just think maybe I'm crazy. Maybe like, maybe I just don't get it anymore, or maybe my family doesn't get it anymore. You just feel disconnected because you don't feel like you think you should, I think. Probably. I don't have either one of those. And so I don't have the point of reference that some of the people that broadcast on this studio, because some of them have been through things like that and they can relate. Um, but hearing those stories and reading what I have about how it's helped, I know they're really feeling that. So I feel like what you're
Yeah.
saying is very on point.
I feel very
Do you have any-
fortunate to be a part of this program myself, and I have the privilege of reviewing the spec scans with the veterans. And I would say that going through the images with them is probably the most powerful part of our program because I've had several veterans show a lot of emotion over being validated by the fact that something is showing up on their scans and there is a way to treat it, to be able to maybe not completely eliminate the symptoms, but have it an extreme reduction in the symptoms that they're experiencing. So it is a blessing to witness it every day.
And that hope is the biggest factor there too.
Mhm.
It gives them so much hope. I mean, it
Right.
physically helps them, but giving them that hope is really important too.
100%.
So what's the first step, Ashley, in engaging those services? What would somebody do if I needed them? What's my first step?
So our website is listed below. On the website, there is a contact us form, and you can reach out to us. It goes directly to me, and so I would be reaching out to you and kind of walking you through the application process to be able to access those services. So visiting our website, or we have a number posted on our website as well. You can give us a call if that's easier for you.
Perfect. Alan, how about you? How does somebody engage your services to do a safe talk, do an assist training? What's the process look like?
Yeah, there's many different ways. Obviously, if you're in the military does have them, but you could reach out to myself and I'll give you my number, 781-879-8414. You can reach out to me and I could definitely talk to you, arrange some trainings with you and find out if there's any trainings going on already in your area to set you up with. Again, we have the different trainings depending on what your needs are. The Safe Talk, again, is a 3 to 4 hour in-person training. So that one is again, basically to get somebody to connect somebody to somebody else, to identify that, having somebody say, I need help, please help me, and connecting them to somebody, where assist is actually going through the full intervention, and assist is a 2-day in-person training. And that one goes through the whole process of getting somebody to say, from the point of, they're certain that they want to die, to changing that outlook to an uncertainty of wanting to stay safe for now. And that's what we want to do. We want to get those people to stay safe for now.
Right. That's awesome.
And the other thing is
Well,
you
we're
go
gonna.
to, I'll also mention you go to our website too, which is at the bottom here, which is the www.livingworks.net.
And I highly recommend it, by the way. I recommend both programs, and that's why I was so excited when they agreed to take up their evening with me and with our NBR audience about just engaging in these conversations and just being a help to people. I think we're going to go to break now. Grizz, if you want to take us to break, and then we'll be back and we'll wrap up our conversations with Ashley and with Alan. Thank you.
Introducing LT Defense Tactical Gear, your ultimate solution for top-notch protection and performance in the field. Our armor bundles provide unmatched safety and comfort, while our battle belts and holsters ensure quick and easy access to your gear. Stay prepared for any situation with our high-quality medical supplies, designed to keep you ready for action at all times. Looking to enhance your skills? Our firearms training programs will take your proficiency to the next level. Trust LT Defense for all your tactical gear needs and gear up for success on the battlefield.
This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Make it clear that the views expressed by our host are not considered the official stance of NBR views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hi, welcome back to Tracer Rounds. I'm your host, Terry, and I've got Alan and Ashley in the studio, and we're just happy for NBR, who gives veterans a voice. So thank you, NBR, and welcome back, Alan and Ashley. Alan, I wanted to ask you a question. So I recently, I'd say a couple of months ago, had a conversation with someone, and they were threatening suicide, and they talked about it. But to me, it was obvious they weren't doing it. They weren't really doing it. It was more, and to be honest, the person was, I guess I'm just gonna say drunk. I'm gonna say that. They were actually drunk. And so I didn't take it on face value. And it was over the phone, so I couldn't go to them because it was a long distance. But I talked with them, and from the conversation, I didn't really think they were at that point, even though they talked about it. What would you suggest in a conversation about that? Because that's kind of the reason why I was always afraid to say suicide, because I thought, well, they're going to do it now that I've said it. I put it out there in that space. And so what would you suggest? And then this was prior to all, the training and everything, and prior to me, like, really wanting to have those conversations. So what would you suggest in a case like that?
Yeah, no, that's a phenomenal question, because that happens a lot, actually. The first thing we always say in the trainings when we go through it is you got to take everything serious. You can't just brush something aside. But as we go through it, we also we have a gut feeling. We have a feeling if we think that's a serious situation or not, or where the person is. And we could tell sometimes by the way they, especially on their voices, how their voices to us, how they're talking to us. The first thing I would say is you did the right thing, take it seriously and talk to them.
Yeah.
But also you want to go through the steps and ask them the question. Again, by asking them the question, it's not going to give them the thought of suicide. It's going to actually say, I care about you. And what it can do is you might find out that he might not be, or she might not be suicidal. But what it might do is it might bring up something and say, hey, you know something? This is what's going on in my life. And, no, I'm not suicidal now, but I do need help. I need help to get past this situation. I just had that call a couple of weeks ago from someone calling me up and asking me, how do I handle this? And it turned out that it was more of a financial situation that they were going through. It wasn't they weren't suicidal. They were in distress. They weren't in crisis at the time, but they were in serious distress. Now, why would that be a good thing that you asked that question? Because maybe you could help them now. Because if you don't help them now and it continues, maybe in 6 months from now, see, one stressor is not going to typically create somebody to think about suicide, but it's the stressors that build on top of each other. And everybody has their breaking point. Everybody's different. Everybody has a breaking point. So maybe that person with the financial problems right now, that stressor is not going to say, hey, I'm thinking about suicide. But you put that there, then maybe they lose their house. Maybe they go through financial problems. Relationship problems. And it keeps on going until it builds up. And maybe 6 months from now, they are thinking about suicide because of all the stressors. So if you could get that, nip that in the bud, as they say earlier, it could really save a life. And that's why it's important. So, but yeah, I would take it seriously and I would follow up with them. And then if you feel in your gut that they were okay and you were okay to hang up with them, obviously do a follow up with them to make sure. And it's always good to also to talk to them. And first of all, you always want to be honest with the person. You never want to tell somebody, we say in the training, as you remember, don't promise secrecy. You could promise discretion, but not secrecy. You want to be honest with the person at all time. And you could say to the person too, you could ask them straight out, will you call me if it does get to a point where you're in crisis and you're thinking about suicide? And you could, take them on their word. If they reply back, absolutely, I will. And again, you can get that gut feeling.
That's really good advice. I hadn't really thought about the follow-up, conversation. Will you call me if you're in crisis? Will you call me if you're feeling a certain way? And that's a way to engage them, like you said, in conversation and to get them really focused on, okay, I have somebody that cares and I can call them and tell them I'm not well. So I think that's definitely part of what, we should be doing is when we have those conversations is, like you said, just kind of asking for them to give you some feedback on how they're feeling and how they're doing. Ashley, what have you noticed in the people that you said that the rate of suicide had dropped from those that have had the treatment? For those that haven't, have you had any follow-up with them, or how have you then coached them to the next step, or what is your suggestion for those that maybe still have some lingering thoughts or doubts or depression?
Yeah, that's a great question. We follow up with everyone who goes through our program. We have a group of veteran volunteers who have been through the treatment before. We call them our battle buddies, and they meet with all of our veterans prior to coming through the program and then also do some of the follow-up afterwards just to check in and see how they're doing. And also, we have a large group of volunteers in South Florida. Alan is one of them who we call upon to be able to reach out periodically to some of our veterans who have come through. And so as much as possible, we try to create a community as best as you can, even if you're not in the same location. And so we provide and just like being part of a community, but also we are very heavy on connecting people with other services as well. And so even though we're not all across the country, we have connections where we've got several people that we reach out to give us some insight into what services might be available in a veterans area, because not everything is a one size fits all, right? Some things work for some veterans and not for others. And so, as much as possible, we try to set them up with community, but also resources in their area that they can tap into if that's something that they're looking for when they leave the program.
That's really awesome. I was going to say, for veterans in general, like when they retire or when they have to get out or whatever the case may be with, with ending their service, they have such a loss of community. And that leads to depression, just the loss of community, just the loss of people that understand what you went through or just, what it takes to be a soldier, what it takes to be an airman, a Marine, somebody in the Navy. It's a different community. It's a different mindset. And when you leave that, you lose that connectivity. And so it's so important to re-engage those connections or that sense of community, because it really does help for overall wellness for soldiers that coming back and trying to integrate, because we integrate, but I don't know if we integrate the same way everybody else would, because our mentality is a little bit different. Like I know when I was over in Germany and I came back to the States and I was like, why does everybody move so slow? Why don't people have a place to go, place to be? Like, what is taking so long? I didn't understand. There was such a difference for me in, just seeing this culture versus that culture. I'm like, why is everything so slow? Why are the cars so big? Why are the roads so wide? Like, it was just different for me. And so, I know that veterans kind of lose that sense too when they're like, everything is structured, everything is organized. You eat at this time, you do this at that time, and and this is your day. And then we're not regimented when we come back, and we're left to kind of our own devices, and then we kind of sabotage ourselves, I think, when we don't have that.
Yeah, and what I also like to just say is it's so important. There are a lot of resources out there, and that's the one thing that people don't understand. They don't know where to turn. They don't know where to go. There are a lot of resources out there, and it's so important to have the list of resources. We call it Keep Safe Connections, and you want to have those numbers on there. So if someone is in crisis, you know who you could call. You don't have to fumble through anything. There's some great resources out there. Obviously, we got to know about 988. If obviously, you dial 1 if you're a veteran, 988. If you're, your chaplain is a great person to have their number, or the suicide prevention at the base. There's so many resources, 211. But again, I always have someone like Ashley on my, for the 22 project, if I have a veteran that says they're in need of something. And the other thing I just want to say is that there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of resources. Try different things. Again, my preference, I think the 22 project with the hyperbaric chambers is a must for people to go through. But there are other things that you need too. There's service dogs, there's, obviously counseling and a lot of other things that you could try.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I know in the class you gave us a list of phone numbers for the Miami area, where I am right now. But when I go home, I'm going to look up all those numbers for Texas, because that's where I live. So I want to be ready in case I need to have a conversation with somebody. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I know now who to call and how to help. And if somebody has and you, Ashley, did you say that the hyperbaric also helps with PTSD as well as traumatic brain? I mean, like, you can help both conditions, right?
Yes, so PTSD often has physical implications in the brain. And so if we are healing damaged tissue in the brain, PTSD is often caused by that as well. It's one of the reasons for PTSD, so it can work for both.
That's good. That's good news for a lot of people, I think. And I'm hoping that as this podcast goes out and more people watch it, that they're able to see how this is really going to be beneficial to them or to somebody they love and know, or, just one of their battle buddies. So I want to thank you two for being on the show. I know we've got about a minute left. Is there any final thoughts?
No, I just really appreciate it. I do want to say one thing about the 22 project, what they did, and I mentioned it before about the sleep. It's so important. People underestimate sleep. Sleep is one of the biggest factors for mental health. And I actually did hear at one of these meetings too, someone say that, they would get nightmares and they wouldn't want to go back to sleep. and then all of a sudden they were going through the treatments, and I believe they said that he didn't have any more dreams anymore, or those dreams turned positive
Good
now.
dreams, yeah.
So they had good dreams, yeah. So again, sleep is so important, and that's one of the main factors, and that's why it helps so much too. I believe, at least.
Well, I think that veterans in general, they operate on little sleep, because I'm one of those. I get about 4 or 5 hours a night, and then that's about it. So I think a lot of us operate that way, and I think maybe I'd operate better if I had a little bit more. So I agree with you. Well, thank you so much for joining Tracer Rounds podcast, and thank you, Alan, and thank you, Ashley. And we look forward to hearing more about success stories.
Thank you, Terry.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting NBR in any way, form that you can. Use this QR code that's attached to the picture, or you can go to our website at mbradio.us. That's Mike Bravo Radio.us.